Like in terms of apps, from users' perspective, it works exactly as today's web. You could imagine something like Reddit on ATPROTO, or something like Stack Overflow, or something like GitHub. There is a project called Tangled. You could imagine something like Last.fm, but really any kind of social thing where you create something, right? Like you create content in some formats, but the difference is that it lives in your folder, right? Like it's like everybody gets a folder and your stuff just goes into that folder, and then apps kind of sync it. So apps kind of become consumers, and the source of truth is actually in your folder.
Welcome to Syntax. Today we have Dan Abramov on, and you probably know Dan Abramov from his work on React. He worked at Bluesky for a while. He's still doing quite a bit of React stuff. It's interesting. But we have him on today to talk about ATPROTO. You may have heard of ATPROTO as like the protocol that is behind Bluesky. And we did an episode on it probably 2 years ago, when maybe even 3 years ago, when like that first Bluesky sort of hump came out. And it's a really interesting protocol, and it can be used for so much more stuff. And I feel like it's kind of underrated. I know Dan feels like it's kind of underrated and really interesting. So we're going to talk about the technical bits behind all of it, what you can use it for. And he even says it's maybe Web 2.1 or Web 3, but the good one. That's kind of interesting. Welcome, Dan. Thanks for coming on.
Hey, thank you for inviting me.
Give us the scoop of who you are and what you do. I know people probably know you, but just in case people aren't familiar.
I don't think people know me anymore.
No?
I've been kind of out of the loop. I've been, I guess I was involved with React for a bunch of years. I used to work on the React team at Facebook/Meta. And then later, and I did some other open source stuff like Create React App and Redux.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I worked at Bluesky for a couple of years, and then I just kind of had a sabbatical, and now I'm starting at Vercel on the Next.js team.
Wow.
Right.
So when did the Vercel transition happen?
Just literally a couple of weeks ago.
That's cool. Before we get into that protocol, can we ask you what you're working on there? Because I'm sure people are dying to know.
Well, I'm on the Next.js team, so just making it better.
Cranking on that. Right on. All right. So ATPROTO, what is it, and why should we care about why this is so interesting?
I don't know. There's so much pressure in this question. I don't know if I can condense it. To me, I think it fixes a lot of stuff. In the Matrix, in the movie, there's this question have you ever felt that something is wrong with the world? And it's kind of like this, but for the internet, right? Internet, especially if you grew up with the internet, I think you kind of maybe remember it as this maybe more lighthearted thing where, you create a website, you post something to it, you can link to each other. It's very permissionless. It's very much kind of there's a spirit of openness and no walled gardens. And then with time, in a sense, it's gotten more social, right? Social networks and so on. So we've gotten shared spaces, but then these shared spaces, they feel like internet inside of internet, different walled gardens, like Facebook or Twitter, where we're gonna put our stuff there. I put my answers on Stack Overflow, or my issues on GitHub, or my posts on Reddit or somewhere else. But then with time, these platforms, they kind of, they fatten up with everyone's content, and then they start doing, they're shutting down alternative clients, start showing ads everywhere, trying to milk, everything that, and we can't really walk away from them, because then we're going to erase everything that we created there. So in a sense, it's kind of we put our stuff into somebody else's box, and then this box is just, it's not on the open web anymore. It's kind of, there's a ghost of it on the open web, the projections, the HTML that you can hit through the servers. But in a sense, it's it's locked somewhere else. And the big thing about ATPROTO is it's kind of like a data layer for the web, is how I like to think about it. So it's kind of like, what if that JSON that we usually put into like other products into their boxes, what if that JSON just, hung on the web? Like the JSON was part of the web, kind of like in the personal sites era, but you still can use apps, of course. So like apps are kind of the consumption and production model, but it lives sort of like in everybody's, like it's like if everybody had a Dropbox folder that all apps can kind of interact with, and then you can always leave an app, but your stuff is still going to be in that folder. And so other apps can kind of, present it differently, or even like write to it differently, and different apps can see each other's content and kind of interoperate. So I think of it as like people-centric kind of part of the web that is missing to, that is necessary to fix these like network effects where we get locked into platforms.
Man, I wish, like, people always say the internet is forever, and like anything you put on the internet will always be around, and like show me my MySpace photos, or like show me, like, there's so much of the internet that simply just goes away because something gets shut down and you no longer have access to it, right? Like my photo bucket got deleted a while ago because they were trying to like squeeze you to pay for my pictures of my bike from 20 years ago. No, I'm not doing that, fine. And you can just delete all that data. So ATPROTO is like, people are always, I think they kind of coincide it with Bluesky, and let's say like, oh, that's just what Bluesky runs on. But the whole idea with it is that you will be able to host your ATPROTO wherever you want. You could self-host it, or you could use like some other service, like Bluesky would be one of them. And then other applications would then consume each of them. Is that a fair way to put it?
You could say this, but I think like the relationship between Bluesky and the protocol is kind of interesting because, like people think it's a Bluesky thing, and Bluesky is this, they think it's like lefty Twitter or whatever, right?
Yeah.
But it's really like Bluesky is a proof of concept that shows like you can build an app on the protocol. So the protocol itself, it has no relation to social media, right? It's not a microblogging protocol. It is literally a JSON, like a JSON layer for the web, like JSON storage layer that is attached to every user. So it's identity for the web and JSON storage for the web is how I think about it. And then Bluesky app is like a proof of concept that you can build an app using this architecture, and it works. And in terms of like hosting, I think the tricky thing there is really like the way I would describe it, Proto, is that maybe I just start by describing it first and then come back to your question, because I think that actually like clarifies it a little bit. So like you have a Google account, right? Like you have like a lot of sites that you log into, but you only have like maybe several Google accounts, right? Because maybe you have like separate identities for like work stuff and personal stuff, or maybe like even a couple different identities for personal stuff. But really, you don't want to have like 400 like password pairs and so on. Like it makes sense to manage them from kind of a single identity piece. And a lot of us use Google for that. And so with Proto, kind of, the first thing that it introduces is it really upstreams that concept into web itself. So the idea is that identity should actually be a legible concept in the web. So you should have a web account. And you don't have to be logged in all the time, of course, or you can have multiple. But ideally, we upstream this so that you don't depend on Google. And so, it could be hosted by Google, but you should be able to switch it to another provider or to host it yourself on your own server. But basically, like the thing that you log into apps with, that should be something that, that is like under your control and that is a web standard. So this is kind of the first idea.
Is that like the idea of like owning your own domain, or does it go even further than that?
It goes further than that. So ATPROTO uses domains as handles. So this is a part of this. Your identity has a handle. But it's not tied to a domain because you want to change handles over time. Like that's pretty common, right? Like people want to be able to change their, like you could lose a domain, right? Like you don't want to lose your identity. So it's like a layer above domains. There's like a identifier that's associated with you. And then there's like a JSON document that says three things. One is like what your current username is, which is a domain, but it can change over time. Kind of like your passport. So like it says who you are, like what's your name, what is your handle. The second thing it says is where is your data stored. So what is your current hosting? And that is the novel concept, right? Like in today's web, we don't really have a concept of per user hosting, right? So like I only have a hosting if I host a website. Whereas here it's, again, kind of more like Google account or Google Drive. It's like everybody who gets, a web account has some hosting. And it could be provided by like a big company, but you could switch it over time to, run it yourself or with a community and so on. It's just like a web standard. So everybody gets a hosting where some JSON can be stored. And the third thing is just your public key, so that the things that you do can be verified. And so this is your identity in ATPROTO, is these three things.
Okay.
And if you want to see all of the errors in your application, you'll want to check out Sentry at sentry.io/syntax. You don't want a production application out there that, well, you have no visibility into in case something is blowing up and you might not even know it. So head on over to sentry.io/syntax. Again, we've been using this tool for a long time and it totally rules. All right. Wes.
And like, obviously microblogging is one use case. But like what else could you use it for? Like literally any piece of content that you put on could be done with ATPROTO?
Yeah. So you can kind of imagine, like in terms of apps, from users' perspective, it works exactly as today's web, right?
Yeah.
So you could imagine something like Reddit on ATPROTO, or something like Stack Overflow, or something like GitHub. There is a project called Tangled that is kind of like GitHub on ATPROTO. You could imagine something like Last.fm, where you send like your music stats and then it displays like aggregation. But really any kind of social thing where you create something, right? Like you create content in some formats, but the difference is that it lives in your folder, right? Like it's like everybody gets a folder and your stuff just goes into that folder, and then apps kind of sync it. So apps kind of become consumers, and the source of truth is actually in your folder.
Okay. So if I wanted to build Dan Iter, which is a new social network, and I want to own my own, I want to own all of my content, you would be creating an app, and then is the idea that it goes off and it just consumes them all, or I sign in with my ATPROTO to your new application, and then all of a sudden I'll be able to create content on there?
Yeah, it works like normal app. So just like you can sign in with the Google account, you can sign in with ATPROTO account, and or like I know ATPROTO is like a technical term, but the network is called the atmosphere, kind of like blogosphere, but atmosphere because right?
Yeah,
like atmosphere, and it's kind of like it's like this cloud that is shared between all apps. Right.
So how does something get onto that stream? How does something get onto that protocol?
Yeah. So the key separation is really between hosting and apps, right? So apps are this like user-facing thing. So this doesn't change. You just use an app, use the Bluesky app, or Tangled, or like for Git, for Git repos, or there's like a bunch of blogging, like macro blogging apps like Leaflet, Offprint, Pocket. So these are all, they work like normal sites. You just log into them, you have an account, you can like write something and publish. But these apps, like the way they work is they're kind of like CMSs in a sense, because when you write something on Leaflet, it actually creates a file in your folder on your hosting.
Mm-hmm.
So it knows where your account's, folder is, and it just puts some JSON there. And it's the same, like if I follow you on Bluesky, I'm actually creating a JSON, like the app will create a JSON file in the Bluesky follows subfolder of my folder on my hosting. So like every action you do, when you like my post, you're actually creating a JSON file in your folder under Bluesky likes that has a link to a post in my Bluesky posts folder in my repo. So it's kind of like a web of JSON with links. And so this is like what happens on the hosting layer is it's like the source of truth for like everybody's stuff that we created that is like available publicly, with no permission. It's just like you can just like grab it as JSON and explore it. And then all apps listen to events from all hosts. So this is how you actually update your database, right? Because like apps, you don't want to go to 1,000 hostings to like calculate the number of likes. Like that would be stupid and it wouldn't work, right? It's too slow. So what happens is that actually all events are being streamed into all apps, like through WebSocket. And on your WebSocket listener in the app, it just puts it into your database. So you just filter out, stuff that is the data that is relevant to your app. Like the Bluesky server listens to Bluesky events about Bluesky records. And like Tangled server listens to events about Tangled records. And some of them may actually they may also care about something else, right? Like Tangled could decide to listen to Bluesky follows and put the Bluesky social graph into its own database and then show me what my friends are pushing to Tangled. So it's kind of like they all can see each other's.
And it's at that app level where you would implement like an algorithm or spam protection or any of that stuff that people would like. Because I think people coincide like app protocol with the people that are like, remember the good old RSS days where you just had a list in chronological order. You see that on Instagram as well. People are like, just go back to photos and show me the people who I follow. And people say that, but I think that what the data shows of people actually doing, and you probably know you worked for Facebook, people like to consume the algorithm a bit more. That's why every single app now has a For You page.
Yeah. And in that sense, I think like I really like RSS as an analogy because, there's like in a sense, like RSS gives a sense of ownership over content, right? Like I publish, like the source of truth is really like on my site or in my, like in ATPROTO, you don't have to have a site. Like the hosting is kind of like a behind the scenes, like it's kind of more like Dropbox per user. But it's really, like it's the source of truth for my stuff is just this JSON that lives somewhere, like wherever my hosting is. Yeah. And then apps are downstream from that. And in that sense, it's like RSS and Google Reader, right? So like sources of truth is like RSS, it's like hosting. But then there are apps like Google Reader that can aggregate it into their own databases, do like algorithms, do recommendations, do global search, and so on. And so in that sense, like ATPROTO app is really like a normal app. The only difference is that the database is not the source of truth. It's like it's where stuff gets synced. So it's really like between the database and the the client. It's a normal web app, but the database itself is actually where the data is flowing from the open web. Kind of like the Google Reader backend actually subscribes to all RSS feeds, and they just they used to go there as like a stream.
Yeah, so that tracks those in that same regard. Is everything on App Protocol public?
Right now, yes. So it's currently focused on public data consumption, and aggregation. So everything that you put there is public. There's actually like a really nice tool called PDS.ls, Personal Data Server, PDS, and then .ls like Unix ls, list files. And you can go to that tool and you can input any handle, and you can literally see, kind of like index of a server, like you can see all the folders. So you can see what's in your hosting for your user, like your kind of JSON records. So that is all public for everyone. They're working to like extend the protocol for kind of protected or like closed, like closed, like not closed accounts exactly, but kind of like
You think like
group
DMs or
shared.
something, right?
Not exactly like DMs. DMs is like
Okay.
E2E is the best thing for that. So, which is like a completely different beast. That there are already good protocols for that, but they're working on like extension of protocol for things like closed groups or forums that are closed and so on. But it's like a separate thing that is still being worked on. It's like it's not out yet.
Yeah. Let's talk about that JSON a little bit more, because like the like tech guy in me wants to be like, yes, we have a standard and it is the same, and everybody publishes on this beautiful standard and it works. And then you look back at the past. I'm thinking about like Jabber or XMPP. This used to be a standard way to chat, and you could have different servers and you could chat with everybody, and everybody had their own IM apps, and you could chat because it all worked on the Jabber protocol. And then very slowly they all got rid of that because they wanted to do like reactions, and they wanted to do images, and they wanted to do inline videos, and they wanted to have groups and filtering and all of this stuff. And our podcast as well. Like most people listen to the podcast now on Spotify, and it's in the Spotify, they give you an RSS feed, but it's not done via RSS because they wanted to integrate video into it. And the RSS spec didn't support that for the longest time. And it just seems like every single time we have one of these standards, we eventually just drift away from it because you want to do things that is past that. So is there some sort of schema that can help morph what the actual data looks like?
Yeah. So ATPROTO itself, it's app agnostic. So it doesn't it doesn't try to what I think is like a mistake a lot of these things do is like try to specify what a post is or like what a comment is. And so like ATPROTO doesn't try to do any of that. It gives you like a language for schema definitions. So instead of specifying like, trying to get everyone to agree like how many characters there should be in a post, instead it lets every app developer define their own types. So you can say like, my Bluesky says like a post is an object with like a text field that's at most 300 Unicode like segments or whatever, and like like a language field and created that date time field, and it's kind of like TypeScript definitions. They're written in JSON, so it's not exactly TypeScript, but there's like there's tools for like LLMs are actually really good at writing this JSON now. It's called lexicon, like this format. But these lexicon definitions, there's like tooling that code gens TypeScript types plus parsing utilities. So for any format that you define, you get like a fully typed, Bluesky post or Tangled repo or like leaflet blog or whatever, object that is like fully typed and can parse that JSON. Yeah, and so in all the like in the users folders or repositories, as they're technically called, all data is broken down into folders that are again like per type. So each application can define their own types, and then that means that like Bluesky post can be different from some other app post, and they can just keep using completely different data formats, kind of like file formats, right? And extensions. Like you can just define your own for your app.
Make your own.
It's also interesting, like some apps decide actually to standardize on the same one. So there's like an example where multiple blogging apps in the atmosphere decided that they want to keep their social graph unified, so that they're they have like a reader. Each of them has like a reader page, kind of like Google Reader, and they were like, it would be cool if you could follow a blog from the other app, right? But it still shows up for you in the reader. And so they kind of standardized on, okay, let's use the same lexicon for the publication itself, so that we can have like a brand color, for example, like a theme there, the publication name, the author, and so on. And let's also standardize for subscriptions. So how you follow each other is the same data format, and posts, or like declarations, like here's a post. And so this is like now they all kind of can show or like link to posts from each other, like aggregate posts from each other. And you can actually, even if you don't use any of those blogging platforms, you can like use tools that integrate with your SSG or whatever you use for your blog, and also publish records in that format. And then they will also show up in these apps, which is kind of cool. Like it's kind of like a standard, but it's grassroots. It's just like 3 developers came together to like unify their data model, and then like other apps are starting to use that.
Okay.
And where do people find out about those particular patterns showing up? Is it all buried away in Discord chats and reposts somewhere? Is there, because I mean on the ATPROTO.com there's a lot of stuff, but where are people finding these standards to, or I guess shared standards, I suppose?
Yeah, so this thing are called lexicons. I mean, a lot of it is just on Bluesky. There's a pretty active ATPROTO community, as you might have guessed. So if you go on Bluesky, search for ATPROTO, like a few posts, and if you use, there's a very good feed called For You. So you can, it's actually better than the built-in feed called Discover that's like on Bluesky. So if you set up this feed called For You, it's super responsive to likes. So if you like a few posts about ATPROTO, you start getting, a lot of community discussions from like people who are active in the community.
Yeah.
But there's also like, there's actually a site called UFOs, like unknown flying objects. If you Google UFO lexicons, you will find that site, and it has like a graph because it listens to all events on the network. So it shows new lexicons that are trending because it watches all the record creations. So you can see, like currently, like what's hot. There's Anisota progress. So this is like an active lexicon today, and Anisota is like a Bluesky client with its own some kind of like gamified, I'm not actually sure what the feature is, but essentially it means that like there's been a lot of record creations for this data type this week or like today.
Okay.
So that's another way you can find out that like something's happening.
Okay, so like the top things that are happening right now in the entire graph of App Protocol is a Bluesky like number 1, right? Second one, a standard document. Third, certified profile. Pusmo streak, study task, teal play, flashes post. That's kind of interesting. You can see what everything that's going on, but these are all just made up, right? Like Bluesky had to make up the like.
Yeah, you can make a West Boss
explosion
podcast episode.
Yes.
Yeah, whatever.
Okay.
I think like people often get the wrong idea about Bluesky because like you said, they have these assumptions about it, but like the fact that you can just kind of create your own algo, or subscribe to a better for you that's such a killer feature of having something like this, a protocol like this.
What about like media or data or things that need to be attached to it, right? Like obviously we can do likes and we can post like a blog post or whatever there as text, but like one of my biggest beefs with Bluesky is that there's a 100 meg upload limit to my video. Would I just be able to like host my own video somewhere and then bypass that 100 meg limit? Or like how does media, photos, videos get attached to these documents?
Yeah, I mean, like one thing about ATPROTO is that you can take as much of it as you want or as little as you want, right? Like nobody forbids you from, you could use it just as identity layer, but like all the actual stuff lives in your database. And so this is kind of like, okay, this isn't like in the spirit of like full ATPROTO, but it's like a step. And there are things that don't like protected data that like aren't even a part of the protocol yet. So like you would have to store it separately, like in your database or whatever. And so this is kind of similar. So there's a built-in thing in ATPROTO for media, which is blobs. So in your repository or like alongside with your repository on your hosting, you can store these like binary things, right? Like images or videos and so on. And the records, your JSON can reference them by the hash. And so in that sense, they're like ATPROTO native, right? But again, it depends on your hosting. So like your host might not be happy with like storing gigabytes just for your personal, because it's much bigger than JSON, right?
Yeah.
So I think this depends. Like one way is like maybe some hosts would allow, specifically like video oriented things, like would allow larger storage. Maybe it's like a paid thing, but I don't know the business models of like storing video, so I can't say how this usually works. Another option is you just like I think you just store it somewhere separately, and then your record is just it has like HTTP link or some kind of ID, and like maybe that is like not on the protocol, or maybe there's some extension of the protocol or some other thing that is. So there's a project called Streamplace that is like at Proto Twitch, and I think they've added support for VODs. So I think they've been thinking about it. I just don't know what's the latest on this, but the author of Streamplays definitely like wrote something like on their profile about it.
That's interesting. I'm looking at all of this stuff, and I think it's always a great idea. And we always on this podcast we always come back to like, what about like regular people? Because like you look at that video, you're like, I don't think regular people are going to pay to host their video, right? You just on Facebook or Twitter or whatever, you just upload it for free.
To be clear, I'm not saying that Proto somehow increases the costs, right? It's the same. Yeah. Like I'm just saying, if you want to host a lot of people's videos, whether you use Proto or not, you better figure out how you're going to.
It's going to be expensive,
Yeah. Right. Yeah, it does. It's so fun because it feels like this is such an old web kind of idea, but with exceedingly modern tech. And like a modern viewpoint on it. So in that regard, like it does, even to go back to the RSS conversation, it does give me those same vibes and feelings. And it feels like more people who embraced things like RSS should be embracing ATPROTO.
Do you have any opinions on if this is like how this interacts with AI or how it intersects with AI? Like, is this good for this type of thing?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's... Like I think it works great with AI, but I don't know if like Bluesky users are super happy about it because there's a lot of like anti AI people there, but I think it's kind of like an application web without the need for APIs. So, if you're building like a GitHub or you're like provide this like REST API, maybe like if like maybe it doesn't have all the features, or like then you shut it down, or like developers at Twitter I don't know, it's like when I look at this, there was like an announcement that Twitter API is now like cheaper, and I'm like, why do you guys agree for pay for it's so ridiculous that we've gotten to the point that like we're hostages on the it's so embarrassing.
I'm dying here because we literally had a call a couple weeks ago where we're talking about building something to like track stats, and we're like, yeah, the Twitter might be a little expensive. It might be a little expensive to get data about our own posts. Like, why is this a conversation we're even having?
Yeah. So in that sense, the like with the product, like the protocol is the API. So if you want to get some data from, if you want to get my like Bluesky data, you don't ask the sure, you could go to the Bluesky API server, but the point of ATPROTO is you don't need to do that. You can just go to my hosting and literally download my repo. And my repo is just, like that's where my files are. And the thing is, like if you want, you can download the entire network. It's going to be terabytes, but you can like there's a person who's working on a public archive, so you can quickly access the current version of like aggregated from like all hostings. It's called Hubble. That's like this like read-only archive that's like up to date, and you can query anyone's data without going to their hosting. So that thing is currently being like it's ingesting like all the all the historical data, like everybody's content, and it's like it's gonna be like terabytes, but you can actually download the whole thing and like crunch the numbers on it or like analyze it. Like you can, it's kind of like you can download the entire internet as JSON, put it into your database, and run queries across products. Right? Like you can make like a SQL query across multiple products and like do joins between them. Like it's pretty crazy. So that's for AI, you know, like AI loves that stuff because there's a single way to query, like agents can you know, cross correlate things and so on.
And according to the protocol, I should be able to delete a piece of content in mine, and that will send off a signal, and you should ripple through, and those things should be deleted as well.
Yeah, so it's kind of like ATPROTO is very scrape. It's kind of like scrape first philosophy where you can't really prevent people from scraping, so you might as well embrace it. And the Bluesky app itself is a scraper, right? It scrapes everyone's JSON. So everybody's like on equal, like NSA is probably also scraping, you know, the entire atmosphere. But that's kind of the deal, is if you put something public, it's equally public to everyone, and nobody can like, you know, nobody else can like start charging rent for the stuff you declared as public, but everybody can scrape it immediately. And so for this reason, like if you delete something at your host, like the deletion is also broadcasted, and the well-behaving apps are supposed to, you know, also delete, or like, you know, there's also like legal things, like you probably want to delete, you know, or you know, I think you're gonna like violate GDPR and so on. But of course, somebody who is, you know, who is not being nice, they can, you know, not honor this deletion. Just like today, somebody who's not nice can like screenshot your Twitter pages, like whenever you post or whatever.
How is it different than like Mastodon, where like I'm not even sure I totally understand how Mastodon works. You know, I have my threads that are posted out to Mastodon instances, but some people reply and I'm not able to reply to them because I don't know where they are. But like this is not the same thing as Mastodon, right?
Yeah, it's pretty different. So the way I like to think about Mastodon is kind of like WordPress. So it's kind of like, you know, it's like a mini Twitter that you can install on your server, and that server that's the entire thing, right? Like it's like a hosted Twitter. So you just spun out a copy of the app, and so you can imagine there's like, you know, like if there's a copy running at like instance1.com, you sign up there, your account is there, like that is the Twitter you signed up for, right? And then like if there's another instance, it's completely independent hosting, completely independent app, and like if your friend makes an account there, it's like a different service, like they have nothing to do with each other. It's just somebody else's app who's like administered by whoever is running it. And then the problem is like, okay, first problem is like your identity is actually inside that app, right? Like if somebody removes that server from the internet, like your identity was there. So it's kind of like it's not really like a network. Like I think of it as similar as to kind of like kingdoms in like ancient China, or like, you know, like fiefdoms where like you belong to this clan or whatever. Like there's you know, there's like part of the map that is like your instance, and then maybe if your friend lives somewhere else, like these instances have to talk to each other, right? Because if I follow you but you're in another instance, what happens is these like copies of Twitter start sending like emails to each other in a sense, right? Like ActivityPub is kind of like a mailbox abstraction, where like these instances start messaging each other and saying, actually, like Wes has posted, and like this instance was interested in, you know, in what somebody here follows him, so I'm gonna send like relay all Wes posts here. So you have this like n squared divided by 2 connections between instances where they like send stuff to each other that you may have missed, but it's very fragmented because like even if you try to like patch it with like loading stuff from other instances or like you know, assembling like on, it's kind of, it's many apps that are disconnected that try to sync to each other via email is like my kind of mental model. And you're tied to a specific one. And like, for example, if admins of one instance decide to have beef with admins of another instance, they may just stop sending messages to each other, and then you're not gonna get your friend's posts, right? Because like your friend is on another instance, which is super weird, right? Like it's
I always found that disconnect to be super odd. Trying to like pick which instance I was going to join, where my account lives. It was like immediately like, this is what's supposed to usurp Twitter. Like this experience, like no one's gonna latch onto this. Where I think Bluesky, people can be unaware of the protocol behind it and still get a Twitter-like experience out of it, which is one of the pros of that design.
Yeah, that's like the paper that they published, with the first version of the protocol is called Usable Decentralized Social Media. So that was very much a constraint that, behind the scenes, there's this like credible exit, there's this like app agnostic hosting that like can change at any time. But from the user perspective, you interact through apps, and developers can build other apps, that have kind of like projections of the entire internet, but filtered down to some specific type of content. But like from the user perspective, it feels like the same web, except that you have, you can see stuff from other apps. Like the boundaries between apps dissolve a little bit, and like stuff from one app can appear in another app, if that makes sense to like developers of both.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, anytime you hear the word decentralized or any of that, like, you instantly go to crypto. I mean, are there lessons from crypto here? Is there any connection at all?
Well, I like to think of ATPROTO as like Web3, the good parts. But the good parts, not a lot. I think the closer, like it's crypto in the sense of cryptography. So the lessons are it's kind of like one failure, or like maybe not failure of RSS, but if you want to scale a network that is, like all these like hosts and the data flows to the apps, you want to have intermediate nodes. Like you want to have these kind of retransmitters, like relays, which makes it easy to like, as an app developer, like I just want to listen to one WebSocket that tells me about everything that's relevant to my app, so I can just feed it into my database. Like I want it to be simple. I don't want to think about crawling or subscribing or whatever. I just want to listen to one WebSocket. So that is, somebody can run a service like this. So like Bluesky runs one. There's a bunch of independent ones. But how do you trust that it's not lying about the content that's flowing through it? And so the solution is kind of the same as in Git, right? In Git, you can sign commits. So the signature travels with the data itself contains enough information that you can verify that it was actually signed by the person who's like public key, So that is how like some lessons from cryptography is really that the content, like the event stream, is signed. But in that sense, it's closer in lineage to maybe Git, or I don't know, BitTorrent, or like some of those other things that are not about blockchain. And the only thing that is, because I think like people try to build social stuff on blockchain, but it's super inefficient because there's a bottleneck of like every write is like an append to a single kind of shared queue.
Yeah.
But this only makes sense when you have a requirement that first, like everything is append only. So if you put some bad stuff there, like it's gonna be there forever. Another problem is that it's it's very inefficient. And I think the big insight for ATPROTO developers was that actually you don't need global ordering on the event log. And if you drop the global ordering constraint, like everything is in a single queue, it actually becomes just the web. So the shape of ATPROTO is really is decentralized, but it's decentralized in the sense that the web is. Like when you use a browser, you don't really think about, oh, like I'm accessing a decentralized network. You just click on links.
Yeah.
And so this is kind of similar, like in that shape.
It's a good way to put it. Does any of this stuff have anything built, like is it good or bad for abuse? Because like we've seen the bots on all of the social networks, and even to use OpenAI to like Codex or whatever, you have to upload a photo of your license, you know, and like I feel like there's more stuff going that way. Some will say because of governments wanting to track you, and some will say simply just because we cannot stop these bots anymore, and it's getting to a absolutely brutal point where everything is obnoxious. I just logged onto my Bluesky right now, and I can see 7 or 8 kind of obviously AI stuff. So is there anything in this that will like help us be able to detect that type of thing? Because I would think that it would be harder to detect spam and bots on these types of things when you don't have all of the clues of what browser did they use, how long did they hover over, you know, all of those little fingerprints that these social networks are using to try to detect if you are maliciously posting.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I'm not sure about, you're right, like in terms of like the browser, I guess like at the app level, you still know that actually. Right.
Where it's authored, I guess you do know. Yes. But
yeah, so like
theoretically you could post from, you don't have to post from the app, do you? Could you just create the document in like a text file?
But that's also quite a signal. Like, you know, it doesn't mean that you're a bot, but it is a signal that like you're not using the main app, right? Which is like, okay, like you're not doing that. But I think like in some ways it's like it's kind of, I think like there's maybe pros and cons. Because in some sense, you can pull analysis between apps, where like you can look at okay, what is this like identity doing across different apps? And if, you know, there could be kind of community run or, you know, things that are kind of like, just like one cool thing about these like open social apps is that you're able to share infrastructure between them because everything flows in the same format. You can have, you know, shared moderation tooling, shared detection systems, shared caches is like what already happens, shared indexes, and so on. So I think that is like maybe the other side of this is that if, you know, if one app builds like some kind of, you know, detection thing for weird patterns of like data you insert or like resources, other apps can agree to also like share that or use that. So maybe that is maybe the flip side of that.
It can work really well, and it also can backfire. I run a Git repo called burner email addresses, which is just a list of domain names that are known, like throwaway emails, and I use it to filter out like signups and whatnot. And a couple times, somebody's legitimate domain name has made it onto this list, and I've ruined a couple people's afternoons. I'll tell you that by their email sneaking onto these. You know, like it gets merged, they download the list, and all of a sudden somebody can't sign up, like an entire school can't sign up for the service anymore. And I was like, I don't know, I want to be in charge of this anymore.
Right.
But also I do like, there's something to say about like a whole community coming behind someone saying like, yes, this domain name or this account is known for high quality posts, and they are not. There's a lot of signals to say that they're good. I don't know what the answer is to any of this stuff.
I think that's actually like another thing that is being tried. I think like Tangled has a vouching system where you can vouch for another user, like as a protocol record, and then, you know, any app can also interpret that. So maybe we'll see more kind of vouching in userland and apps about like agreeing about the format, like the lexicon for those vouchers. So we'll see. I don't know what's gonna happen, but I think open just leaves more opportunities to collaborate and post.
Even the follow lists on Bluesky were huge for that. Just like this, here's a list of people that I follow, and I trust these people, and I just click follow the whole thing because I trust the person, therefore I trust the people on this list.
Yeah. So we've heard a lot about the protocol, but like, let's talk about some of the work on the protocol. Like, what are some of the cooler things you've seen done?
Yeah, so that's kind of what I wanted to talk about is so because you can define your own formats for data, it actually leads to some interesting interesting things happening that like don't really happen in like closed ecosystems. So one example I mentioned before is, there were three different blogging platforms on ATPROTO. One is called Leaflet, another Offprint, and another what is it, Pocket. And so they kind of teamed up. Let's use the same format, and then each stuff from each app will appear in another app. And so this is called standard site. So they published it as a format. They called it standard site, and this let like posts appear in different places. But then other developers started using this format as well. So there's like integrations for like your blog to appear in the atmosphere by like if you start on deploy publishing standard site records under your account, then any app that listens, like these blogging apps will see your posts. But people also started building like more stuff around it. So somebody built an app called Standard Reader, which is an aggregator of all standard site records, and it kind of shows like what standard site articles are popular, like in your network, like if you log in, like which of them are being shared by your like Bluesky follows, and so on. So it's kind of like nobody had to coordinate. Like you can just like build an app, ingest an existing data on the network.
Yeah.
And then another cool thing was Bluesky added like a special embed card. If you share a post or like a link that has a standard site record associated with it, it's gonna get like a special visual treatment that uses your brand color of your publication. So it's kind of like a special embed.
That's cool.
And again, like I think that's like it's interesting here that Bluesky app did not need to like ask someone's permission to do this. It's just that this data already exists in the open web, so they just started ingesting it and using it in their app. And I think that's like one interesting example. Another example I like is do you know Last.fm?
Yep.
Yeah. I was on Last.fm from like day one, forever and ever ago.
So there's a like a ATPROTO version of that called Teal FM. Teal is in color. Except that the app doesn't actually exist yet. So it's like a few people's like hobby project. So they're like, I think there's some private beta maybe, but the app itself is just like a landing page. However, they published their lexicon on GitHub. So there's a lexicon for TLFM play that just represents like one scrobble, right? Like one play of a track. Like has the artist name, the track name, and so on. And so people started building tools that sync your Spotify or Apple Music or whatever, and write your TLFM play records to your repo. And as a result of that, the data for a lot of people is already there. Like I'm posting TLFM records when I listen to on Spotify, and so people started building like there are third-party TLFM apps that show what everybody's like. There's already like 6 million, I think, like plays across like everybody, and they're showing like which are like popular artists, so, like who's listening to what. But the TLFM doesn't even exist.
Yeah.
So like it's just kind of weird, right?
Yeah. Man, it's just somebody created a schema standard and people started pushing out data. And then like where does that data can be stored anywhere, right? Like it can be hosted on your own server.
In your hosting. Yeah. So like for example, like at ATPROTO hosting, it's a bit weird, right? Like when you sign up on Bluesky, you kind of think of Bluesky as one thing, but it's really two completely unrelated things. It's the Bluesky app and the Bluesky hosting. And it's just because they need to bootstrap this whole thing, right? Because you don't have like ATPROTO, nobody has ATPROTO accounts. So by default, when you sign up on Bluesky, you get Bluesky, like you use Bluesky app, but your ATPROTO hosting is Bluesky hosting initially. And, as a user, you don't care about it. It's just like behind the scenes, you get a folder and Bluesky is your host. But you can change that to some other host. So I changed it to Eurosky. It's like a, European-based hosting, or I could host it on Cloudflare by myself,
Okay.
or like somewhere else. So it's whatever. It's just whatever speaks the HTTP and WebSocket like a protocol format. But the point is, like, I still use the Bluesky app. It's just my hosting, like my JSON lives in a different place, but the Bluesky app is my kind of entry point into, the prism through which I look at everybody's JSON. But there are like other apps that display content from, Bluesky, like Bluesky content and so on. So it's really kind of two separate things, like the hosting and the apps. And you can always change your hosting, and data from all apps lives in that folder. And you can put that folder like somewhere else.
Cool.
Yeah, that rolls. Okay. I went from not knowing very much about this, if I'm being entirely honest. I thought it was just the protocol behind Bluesky and other things, to having 18 tabs open and ready to dive in a bit more. So thanks, Dan.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. So now's the part of the show, if you don't have anything else, where we can get into sick picks and shameless plugs. Dan, it's been way too long since we've wanted to have you on this show. So this was probably, if you don't know, we do a sick pick and a shameless plug, where you can pick anything that's cool in your life, something that you're just really enjoying. Could be anything, podcast or physical objects or anything that's giving you joy. And then just a shameless plug whatever you want.
Yeah, I haven't prepared. I forgot that this is a thing. For sick picks, I'll choose. I've been listening to some jazz lately, and like I used to think that I hate jazz, and I think like mostly I still hate it. Like I don't like most of it, but I really got into Thelonious Monk, and especially like his solo piano. Like there's like a solo piano album and solo Monk, I think, but like they're actually really good.
Yeah.
Like I'm really enjoying them. So that'll be my, what is it, sick pick or
Your sick pick, yeah. Check
That's
out your
sick pick,
his Teal FM, and
yeah.
Get some solo Monk on there, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
And a plug. What would you like to plug to the audience?
Like my own thing.
Yeah, anything you want. Yeah, something you're working on, something you want other people to check out.
Well, so this is I'm doing my job, but no, like actually, we're gonna release next 16.3 soon. I hope soon, but
Cool.
there's a preview for it, and it's actually like, I like Next programming model, but like I'm a very frustrated user of Next because it's been like, hellish slow and kind of buggy in a lot of places and so on, and so the team is like working super hard to fix it. But one thing and there's a couple of things that like I'm excited about this release. One is that the dev server is not as memory hungry anymore, and because they just added like cache eviction to disk, so it's like for some cases like 20 gigabytes goes down to like 2 gigabytes.
Oh man,
so it's like 90% improvement, which is
wow,
kind of wild for like long dev sessions. The other thing that I'm excited about is a new feature called instant navigations, and there's something like opt-in, but there's like a skill that helps you opt into it. But essentially it lets you assert that it doesn't let you have to be intentional about anything that blocks the page from loading, and like is not instant. And so it kind of forces you to, like, if you follow its suggestions and fix the code, or like let your agent fix your code, then it guarantees that navigations between pages in a Next.js server app feel like a spa. So they're kind of instant, client-side shells that feel immediate. There's like a bunch of features like we're building around that, but yeah.
Cool.
Does that have to do with where you put your suspense boundaries, or is it a bit more Next specific?
Okay. Yes, it's essentially it just forces you to kind of push things down enough to let it generate a reusable shell for the route.
Yeah.
So that it can just it's kind of like in the spa, the part of the route before you first use load whatever, right? It's like this generic thing that doesn't know what it's loading yet. So that is what like Next extracts automatically as long as you push suspense a bit down, or you like slap a use cache on the content so it can kind of show it immediately and cache it on the client.
Beautiful.
Sick.
Or you can say that you're okay with blocking, and then it's like a slow load, but you're intentional about it.
Yeah. In some cases, you would be okay with it. Man, I'm stoked that you are working on Next because I've got some qualms. I'm a big Next fan, but I've got qualms, and I'm stoked that you're gonna kick down the door and I think fix some of these things. If you ever want to come back and talk React and whatever, I'm sure people would enjoy that as well. Cool. Thanks so much for coming on. Appreciate your time, and we'll catch you later.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Dan.
Peace.
Bye.